Miami has had a lot of superstars in its short and successful history, but there's also been a ton of quality role players that have helped the Heat over the years. Who are our favorites of all time? We'll draft our role player dream team on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So we're doing something a little different today, based on a recommendation from a listener. Tronny writes in, "Hey David, I saw the UD interview with Kel'el Ware. He said that Ware didn't know much about some of the old school Heat players. I think it would be cool if you guys did a starting five and bench of some of the best or most fun Heat players of all time. But," he adds, "you can't have anybody from the big three, no Shaq, no Tim Hardaway, or anybody on the current roster in your team. I think it would be a cool segment idea." Well, not just is it a cool segment idea, it's a great idea for a whole dang show, because that's what we're doing today. We are going to draft, 10 rounds, 10 players each. Our favorite Heat sort of role-ish players of all time. We're going to try to put together a starting five and a bench. Fantasy draft style, essentially. That's what we're doing here. We're adding a couple of things here. So, per Tronny's rules here, no LeBron, no D Wade, no Chris Bosh, no Shaquille O'Neal, no Alonzo Mourning, no Tim Hardaway. David, you had the idea to institute a coach's challenge where we can each veto one pick for the other player.
Yes.
We flipped a coin before we started recording. Before I reveal who has the first pick, I do want to at least play the clip that Tronny was talking about there. So this is from Udonis Haslem talking with Kel'el Ware at Summer League for the OG podcast that he does with Mike Miller. Kel'el Ware, who is 20 years old, clearly does not have the deepest knowledge of Heat history.
Born after Dwyane Wade was selected by the Heat. That's to put things in context for everybody.
Wow. Let's play the clip.
But give us your top 5 Heat players.
I'm definitely got to put LeBron in there. I'm gonna put Bosh in there, of course. Like I said, I want to play against him. I'm gonna put Bosh at the 4. I'm gonna put Shaq at the 5.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a towel lineup.
Shaq, 5. Okay. So our 3, 4, and 5s are set.
Yep.
Well, Brian, you can put him anywhere.
D Wade, of course.
All right.
Okay. D Wade.
And for my 1.
I want to see who his point guard.
All right.
Know what I'm saying?
He ain't gonna know the point guard though. He's supposed to put him there. We had him on the show. That's who it should be.
That's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking?
Who?
I think Tim Hardaway.
I would say Tim Hardaway.
At the 1?
I would say
Man,
Tim
that man
Hardaway
was the
point.
UTEP two-step.
He don't remember the UTEP
First of all, the
two-step.
UTEP two-step was going on. Dad was just.
So, Kel'el, who, and I'm not even holding this against him, like you said, born after Dwyane Wade was drafted, which I hate you said that, but it's a good data point there. He's from Little Rock, Arkansas. He shouldn't know who. I don't expect him to have the deepest knowledge of Miami Heat history. Why does the history of the Miami Heat matter to a guy from It doesn't. But it is a little funny that Mike Miller called it. Like, he doesn't even know who he's supposed to have at point guard. And when he says Tim Hardaway at the 1, Kel'el responds at the 1, which is a clear indication that he has no idea who this guy is. It's like, no, put him at center. You know what I mean? Like, where are you going to put Tim Hardaway?
I didn't even think about that. He's like, yeah, no, that guy's a multi-tool player. He's like, he's not even 6 feet tall. Of course you're going to put him at the 1. You'd have no choice but to put him at the 1. I mean, that's funny. I hadn't even caught that before. But yeah, this is a guy not extremely well versed in Heat history, nor should he be, to your point.
But we are, and we should be, because we have the Miami Heat podcast. So we're going to go ahead and do this. We flipped the coin before we started recording. I do have the first pick, okay? So as a reminder to all of our listeners, real quick, we're picking 5 starters, 5 bench players. No Dwyane Wade, no LeBron, no Chris Bosh, no Alonzo Mourning, no Tim Hardaway, no Shaquille O'Neal. We each have one coach's challenge each. So we could decide based on, I don't know, whatever factor. If you don't think that that player counts as a role player, I don't know that we're necessarily only doing role players.
Larry David,
spite, which is even funny.
It's all
right,
spiders,
one.
Spite challenge.
All right, so a spite challenge. We're gonna have one spite challenge. All right, my number one pick. And by the way, I'm adding like my personal feelings to this, just sort of my favorite players of all time.
Yeah, we
as
talked
well,
about
right?
it. We talked about it. Even in Tronny's original tweet to me, like, your best or most fun, like those are two very different things. There have been some really good role players. So you and I kind of just figured out, you know what, maybe it's just more about our favorites, like the guys that are kind of walk that line. Maybe they weren't the best role players, but they were a lot of fun to watch, So we're trying to kind of straddle that line as carefully as possible while having as good a team as possible as well, which is kind of where the coaches challenge comes in, or the spite challenge, let's call it.
No all-time rank. Oh, one rule though, we haven't talked about this. If you spite challenge a player off my team, does that player re-enter the draft pool, or is that player eliminated from the draft?
No, eliminated,
Okay, all right. So I feel pretty good about this one then. No all-time Heat draft of role players, favorite players, or any kind of players would be complete if you didn't have Udonis Haslem, who conducted this interview in question anyway. I'm picking UD with the number one pick, and I'm giving myself an air horn because of it. Yep, Udonis Haslem. That's my number one pick.
I mean, good safe bet. It's good value pick. I don't think you're going to get an all-time leading rebounder who, fits the bill as well as UD. He's Mr. 305. He's been with the team forever. Quality guy in the locker room. He's going to lead your team through thick and thin, and he fits a need too. You could put him at forward, you could put him at center, and he's also basically like your coach too. So,
I like that. Just you mentioned all-time leading rebounder, second in games played, eighth in points all-time in Miami Heat history as well. That's despite him not playing like basically the last 5 or 6 years of his career. So, Udonis Haslem was the number one pick. You're up.
I know you think who I'm taking at number one, but I'm actually going to throw a curveball here. A former teammate of Udonis Haslem. I'm taking the best point guard in Heat history, Goran Dragic. And that's, I know, going to open up a lot of criticism right there, because a lot of people think Hardaway is the best point guard. But to me, I think Goran, it's a tight race, but I think he's just a great role player, a guy who can fit many different roles. I loved watching him play. I love talking to him. So I think that kind of is more towards the favorite aspect of it. At the same time, he's also a heck of a player. So to me, I got Dragic at number one.
Dragic is third all time in assists behind Tim Hardaway. Heat all time, Miami Heat history. He is not in the top 10 in games played. So this is a guy who really did make the most out of his time in Miami. You know what I mean? He's also ninth in points all time in Heat history. He spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons in Miami.
Yep.
I'm going with my spite challenge right out the gate, though.
Oh!
He made an all-star team while being a member of the Miami Heat. Goran Dragic is out of here, dude. That's not a role player. You can't pick Goran Dragic. Come on. Get that out of here. Spite challenge right off the bat.
It wasn't just role players. It's guys in Heat history, favorites. I mean, I think he played a role. That's, you know what? I can't refute it. You get your spite challenge, but that's it. You don't get one later on at any other point. You've used it all up. You're the anti-Spo whipping out that challenge.
First quarter. First play of the game. First play of the game. Let's go. Right. Get it out of here. Can't take Goran Dragic. Pick a new player.
You know what? I'm gonna go and take a spite pick now. Somebody I know is probably high on your board.
Oh no.
I'm taking Brian Grant as my spite pick because I know he's high on your personal board of favorites. He's a forward center guy, outplayed his position like tooth and nail, fighting, clawing his way for every rebound. Just a great player to kind of help bridge the gap between the Alonzo Mourning era and the next Dwyane Wade era. And he's just a great role player. So I'm taking Brian Graham, old BG.
So part of this exercise that we're doing too is not just for me to spite you and for us to have fun with this, but it's also to educate, I think, some of our listeners too, and people who might have been born the same year as Kel'el Ware or right around it and don't remember Brian Grant because he was only in Miami for a couple of seasons, but he did bridge that gap. Alonzo Mourning retires with the kidney disease, and the Heat...
no, incorrect. Sorry, Brian Grant comes to the Heat in 2000. Right, he's supposed to be that next forward to play alongside Alonzo.
Alonzo, yes,
right, next to Alonzo. But Alonzo gets sick in 2000 after playing in the Sydney Olympics, and then the whole team goes in the tank. Or basically after that, they still managed to make the playoffs. But Zoe's dealing with kidney issues for the next couple of seasons while he's still ostensibly on Miami's roster. BG stays. He goes through the 2000-2003 season. Of course, that's when they drafted Caron Butler. They didn't win a lot of games. They wound up getting the 5th pick in the next draft in 2003. Brian Grant's still on the roster. A rookie by the name of Dwyane Wade happens to play really, really well. And then Brian Grant winds up shining in that kind of role as a forward center. And then he winds up getting traded the very next year. So he played 4 seasons in Miami, and then he was traded in 2004 to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for one Shaquille O'Neal.
Exactly. And so, and he was the big part of that Shaq deal, too. And so he had that great year in Dwyane Wade's rookie year, too, playing out of position at center, essentially, because Zoe is no longer there. So, like you said, one of my favorite players in Heat history, because that was one of my favorite teams in Heat history, was that Dwyane Wade rookie season. That was literally the team that got me, that made me fall in love with the Miami Heat and with basketball in general. So, great pick for you, and great reverse spite psychology there on your part. All right, so we both got our top picks out of the way. How are we going to fill out the rest of our rosters? Our next picks are coming up here on Locked On Heat.
You know, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's no spite involved when it comes to picking tickets for your next major event, and Game Time is the best place to do it with their killer last-minute deals. They're all-in prices, their views from your seat feature, and their lowest price guarantee, all that and more. That's what makes Game Time the best place to take all the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball, theater shows, concert tickets, whatever you're looking for, you'll find it over at Game Time. Again, so many different things. We talked about Major League Baseball. If you wait till after first pitch, the price of a ticket will drop dramatically on your Game Time app, and then you can sweep those tickets up for half the price, maybe in some cases that they might have been available for just seconds earlier. It's that convenient. It updates right away too. And again, you get the seat views feature so you can see exactly where you're sitting. Maybe you're in a town you're not familiar with. You don't know what that venue looks like. Boom, you look it up on Game Time. You'll see exactly where you're going to be sitting once you buy those tickets. It's so convenient. Again, all their different features, you'll find them all by downloading the Game Time app today. You create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply, but create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, excuse me, you get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Miami Heat talk every day, 5 days a week. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app. All right, my number 2 pick here. This is tough.
Yes, it is.
But I'm going with Lamar Odom. I had to get some representative off the 2003 Heat team, and I like Odom there. Versatility is the name of the game here. He might have been on that 2003 Heat team, but we're playing this in the 2024 NBA, I think. I don't know how it exactly works. But played one season with the Miami Heat.
It was a magical year, though.
It was an incredible year. The Heat had no business making the playoffs. They have this strong surge at the end of the season. Lamar Odom is ostensibly going into the season the team's all-star. It was supposed to be him with Caron Butler and a young Dwyane Wade, and we'll just sort of see what he can do. Dwyane Wade ends up taking the reins of the entire team, powering them into and through the first round of the playoffs. And Lamar Odom is great the entire time. So great, in fact, that he's included as the centerpiece of that deal when the Heat basically fast forward the Dwyane Wade timeline and say, you know what, he's good. We're ready to go. Let's go ahead and trade for Shaquille O'Neal right now. Odom, of course, ends up going to the Lakers, wins a championship, a couple of championships with LA, but and has maybe I would suppose his most memorable years with the Lakers. I would think most people would say, but was such an integral part of that first Heat team, of that first Dwyane Wade Heat team, I should say. and an obvious cornerstone for the trade package that landed at that point, the biggest star Miami Heat basketball had ever seen when you had Shaquille O'Neal arriving on the shores of South Beach. So Lamar Odom, great stuff.
That's a tough one. That's a great value pick there. Like, I mean, the whole Lamar Odom saga, like, of course, I mean, I don't even know if you remember this, but you know how Anthony Carter and his agent was supposed to fax in at this point in time in 2003. He was supposed to fax in that they were going to opt into a player option for the following season, failed to meet that deadline, thereby creating enough salary cap space for the Heat to sign Lamar Odom to an offer sheet, because man, this is crazy. At that point in time, the Los Angeles Clippers and Don Sterling, who was the owner of the team, they had a number of young players that were all restricted free agents, and they were all signed offer sheets. Elton Brand was the first player that they wanted, but the Heat wind up signing him to an offer sheet. Then the Clippers matched, and then the Heat went in and said, you know what, we'll take Lamar Odom off your hands. And that's exactly what they did. They swept in, took Odom. It was a great year. And when he was a free agent later on, I think it might have been even after during the Big Three era, and there were some idea that maybe he might join the Miami Heat. I was like, oh, that would a perfect reunion. It would have been so great. He's always had a connection. Loved Pat Riley, loved Dwyane. It would have been a phenomenal re-addition to the team. But man, that was a great pick. I am kind of like stuck here now because, you know, Lamar Odom, he was going to fill so many different needs here. But you know what? I'm going to take one of the winningest players in Heat history and NBA history, perhaps, in sense of everything he does. Shane Battier. He's my next pick.
Great pick. Very good pick. Now we're getting some more recent players other than Udonis Haslem, obviously, where Shane Battier, part of the Big Three Miami Heat, the guy that really kind of tips the scales, right? They lose in the 2011 finals to the Dallas Mavericks. They go the Heat the next year, use their mid-level exception on Shane Battier. They bring him in. Ends up starting at power forward when they tilt all the way into small ball with Chris Bosh at center. And Shane Battier is really the guy who unlocks it. And before Shane Battier, they never had anybody like Shane Battier. And even after Shane Battier, well, not after, Shane Battier kind of aged out of his prime while in Miami. They ended up sort of replacing him with Rashard Lewis. And it didn't exactly work in 2014. So he was sort of that skeleton key to the best version of the Big Three Heat we've ever seen.
Yeah, no, they had a number of good 3-and-D players, but nobody quite like Shane. Like, I was lucky enough, even during the pandemic, when we were trying to figure out content, you know, just because there was no games being played, we had no idea what the bubble was going to happen. I had Shane on the show, and he kind of told that story about the beginning of the win streak for the Miami Heat during the 12-13 season, and just talking about touch the people and wanting to make an impact, and what a pivotal moment in their lives this was. That they felt like they were on the cusp of something special on that Super Bowl Sunday, where he kind of just spoke to the team, and then they went on winning, what was it, 26 straight games after that. Like, that was just a phenomenal conversation with Shane. And he's just a great guy, a winner through and through. He reads all the analytics. He knows everything about like how to make the most of his limited tools and stuff like that. It's not like he was a bad athlete. He always knew he needed an extra edge, and he always found a way to challenge anybody, whether it was a Kobe Bryant or a Dwyane Wade or whoever. He always did his best. So yeah, he's a good pick.
6th pick in the draft, right? Not by any stretch a bad athlete, but always one of those more analytically inclined guys. And he even had a couple of front office roles after he was done playing, where he was more an analytics kind of guy. So
small footnote: the only player in NBA history to be part of 2 20+ game win streaks. You know, because he was with one of the Houston Rockets as well. Yeah. So
I'm going my next pick. I'm going Jason Williams.
Ooh, good one.
Yep, loved him. Played 3 years in Miami, 2005 to 2008. Obviously was part of that championship team in 2006, where Pat Riley, so they trade for Shaq in the summer of 2004. They should have won the championship in the 2005 finals, but Dwyane Wade gets injured during the playoffs, basically breaks his ribcage in the playoffs. And that basically stops Miami in their tracks during the postseason. They come back the next year, though, and they sort of revamp the whole roster around Dwyane Wade and Shaquille O'Neal. They trade for Gary Payton. They trade for Jason Williams. They start adding. They trade for Antoine Walker. They add all like the what's Pat Riley call it? The swords and shields. Swords and shields. Is that what he called them? And those were the swords and shields. And Jason Williams had a tremendous career in Sacramento and then later in Memphis to begin his career, comes over to Miami at the age of 30, but is exactly the player that needs to play next to Dwyane Wade. Remember, Dwyane Wade early in his career played basically point guard full-time for the first couple of years because they never really had that true point guard. And Jason Williams, who was a phenomenal passer, comes into Miami having averaged basically like 6, 7, 8 assists per game for his career. Awesome three-point shooter. One of the first was early on in sort of the pace and space part of basketball where the guy got up the floor so quick, would take early shot clock pull-up three-pointers basically twice a game. And it was the coolest thing because he just amped up the pace. And then you saw that really click for Dwyane Wade where he's like, oh, we can play in the full court now. Like, that's new. And I really think he helped kind of get Dwyane Wade to that next level. I loved watching him and Dwyane Wade in that backcourt. And I'm picking Jason Williams to be my point guard.
Great pick. Can't go wrong with J. Will.
Nope.
But kind of you see things starting to play out a little bit.
Yep.
And now I already know since you used your spike challenge too, I know you can't challenge this one. I was a little iffy about this one. He was a little lower my board because, again, I thought you might whip out that spike challenge. I'm taking Ray Allen.
That's a good
That's
one.
my role player. He is obviously, by the time he joins the Miami Heat, not quite the superstar he had once been in Milwaukee, Seattle, etc. But such a vital part of Miami's 2-year run to the finals in 2013 and 14. Still a great player, accurate three-point shooter, just a great overall presence, a guy who's been through so much over the course of an NBA career, and still very athletic, very good player. Of course, he's still an incredible shooter. Defender, let's say at that point in time, he's still an earnest defender trying his best, but he was never really known for his defense. He was just once athletic enough to be able to overcompensate for it, but even in his 2 years with Miami, he wasn't necessarily a bad defender. He just wasn't a very good one either. But either way, he fits an obvious need for Miami, for my team of role players and with shooting and everything else like that. So I'm taking Ray Allen with the third pick.
It's a great pick. That's a great pick. Obviously, the big shot in Game 6 of the 2013 Finals is reason enough to put him on any list of favorite, best role-playing Heat players, whatever. All right. I think I'm going to surprise you with this next pick.
All right.
Because this is from an era of Heat history that we have not even touched yet. We're going to do that after the break. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Locked On Heat. Let us know who would make your starting 5 of Miami Heat favorite role players. Also follow us on your favorite podcast app. All right, so I've got Jason Williams, Lamar Odom, and Udonis Haslem. You've got Ray Allen, Shane Battier, and Brian Grant. I think I need like a wing because Haslem and Odom are more sort of big men forward types. I'm going with Luol Deng here.
Oh!
I'm going with Luol Deng. 2 years in Miami in that very weird kind of
post-LeBron,
pre-Jimmy Butler, even pre-Dwyane Wade coming back kind of era.
Yeah.
Those to me are the lost years of Miami Heat history because I don't know that most people can name, even Heat fans, like 4 players on that roster. You know? 5. There's not a lot there. There's the Chris Bosh thing was happening where is his career over or not?
Yeah,
Goran Dragic had just basically joined the team after that first year without LeBron James and all these things. So then Dwyane Wade leads in the summer of 2016. Luol Deng joins the roster 2014-15 and 2015-16 season. Plays only 2 years. Averages just like 13 points per game. Shoots 35% on threes. This is after he had been in Chicago for most of his career. His stats weren't crazy, but he just filled the gaps. He was a professional. He was one of the, and he gave the Heat not an identity necessarily, because I wouldn't put Luol Deng at a guy who you could build a system around, but like a level of professionalism that I think was very much needed, and credibility. Maybe credibility more than anything, because like you said, you had the end of D Wade, you had Luol Deng. You had a little bit of Chris Bosh there. Deng was supposed to walk in and sort of replace LeBron James, essentially, at small forward.
Yeah.
But you know, the Heat obviously kind of go into this new era after everything had happened.
Yeah.
And Deng was sort of a part of that. So I'm going with Luol Deng.
I love it. I love it. I love the Deng signing. Like, you know, I talked about that day when we found out about LeBron, and that kind of was like the end of my fandom because it was just like, it was so unexpected. Like our podcast was, I mean, it was fledgling podcast. We were the Heat podcast at that point in time. We weren't even Locked On Heat. There was no Locked On Podcast Network. And I remember seeing the Lee Jenkins piece and LeBron going home. And then all of a sudden, following that, though, once that kind of hits in, it's like, oh man, that's the end of this team, because the Big Three era was so much fun, so exciting. It was us versus them and everything else. And then that kind of ended it all when LeBron chooses to go back to Cleveland. And then Chris Bosh re-signs with the team. You're like, oh, like the lowest of the lows and the highest of highs. Chris Bosh is back again. He's joining the team. And then you find out, I'll never forget, 2 for $20 million, Luol Deng. It's like, whoa, hey, we're not going to be so bad. This isn't the end of everything. Like you said, it's
like that Monty Python thing. I'm not dead yet.
It was a really respectable addition, you know? It was like you're getting a guy who you faced a lot in Chicago, great defender, solid 3-and-D type player, professional, everything else. Everybody loved him as a locker room presence. Just a great overall guy. And to slide him in, exactly as you said, kind of as the sort of, you know, you can't really feel the LeBron size shoes,
but it filled his position, like right? That was the, you know, you got a starting caliber, a credible, respectable small forward. That same summer, they went out and signed Josh McRoberts to kind of pair with Chris Bosh in that front court. Not sure he's making one of our lists here, so I didn't feel bad kind of saying his name there. But you're up.
Yeah, I guess I am. Luol Deng, that's a good one. I'm going to go with Mario Chalmers. Just take my point guard right away. I know he was going to be on your list, but I figure I might as well get that point guard in there. I already got Ray Allen. I know he's a little bit more of a recent player, but I tried looking at some of the role player point guards. There are a few, none that really come as close as you took Goran away with your spy challenge. You took Jay Will with your pick. You got to go with Rio. Like, I mean, what can he say about Rio? A guy with the utmost confidence in the world. Never quite as good as he thought he was. Never quite as bad as a lot of people thought he was either. So he was just a perfect pick. And you want that kind of swagger. You want that confidence. That guy's going to give you some identity right off the bat. And he's going to be the one who wants the ball in his hands until Ray Allen tells him, you know, forget about it. I'm going to be the one that actually shoots it. So, you know, I like that Rio is still available. I knew that once you took Jay Will, you'd probably have Rio on your bench, but I had to go in there and sweep in and try to add him for my team.
It's a great pick. I'm a little disappointed by it. I kind of knew I had to pick between Jason Williams and Mario Chalmers, and I feel like my brand is almost a little too strong pro Mario Chalmers, so I had to diversify the portfolio a little bit there. But it's a great pick, and I love your backcourt. Chalmers and Ray Allen and Shane Battier, in terms of your perimeter players, you're shooting some threes right now, and you got Brian Grant cleaning up the boards on the offensive rebounds. I like your team quite a bit so far. That leaves me in a little bit of a tough spot at my next guard position. I think I'm going to leave it for a second and go in another direction. And I'm going to go Chris Anderson, Birdman, with my next pick. I think I have this right. The Heat still have not lost a game in which Chris Anderson has played. What was that streak? It was crazy. Didn't they immediately go on the 27-game winning streak?
It was right after. I think
they lost a game or two, and then they just went right on it. Comes off the bench, plays like 12 minutes a game, and just super energy guy. The kind of backup center that I don't know that we have in the NBA anymore, where you kind of looked forward to having him in the game, where you're like, oh man, like when he comes in the game, we're going to play like this energy style basketball, and we got this hustle guy that comes in. I don't really know that there's anybody. Andre Drummond might be the closest thing to that. I don't know that any fan base is looking forward though to Andre Drummond checking in. I don't know that player really exists anymore. So Chris Anderson, a throwback. All the accoutrements that went along with Chris Anderson were always wonderful as well. Easy pick for me, and I have him as my backup center coming off the bench, which is the exact ideal role that he ought to play.
So well, no, that's your fifth pick. So the Birdman's your starting center.
I have Haslem and Odom in my starting lineup. We're gonna still do the other. We got to do the bench too, right?
Yeah. So Bird is your starting center though. So you got UD.
We'll see. I can move it. I can move him around.
Oh, Oh, I thought we were drafting by position of starters. Oh, okay.
No, it's like a fantasy football draft. You could move players to the bench. He's my sixth man.
Enough. Yeah. All right. Well, in that case, then I am taking one of the best players in history, Heat history, with my 5th pick. Probably one of my favorite players, and I knew you weren't going to take him anytime soon. I'm going with Glen Rice. Just phenomenal shooter, way ahead of his time. Just a guy who probably would have thrived. Like you mentioned, I already got Ray Allen. I've got Rio shooting some threes, Shane taking some threes. Why not bring in probably one of the best 3-point shooters in Heat history, along with Ray, along with James Jones? Like, they had such great 3-point shooters. I got to get Glen Rice. But he was a guy who had, like, again, at that point in time during his Heat tenure, before he became a multi-time All-Star with the Charlotte Hornets, he was just, a young, up-and-coming player, the kind of player that a lot of fans nowadays would love for this team because he just had so much potential, and he just didn't realize it until he was traded to the Hornets for Alonzo Mourning. Still a move that I will not forgive Pat Riley for, because Glenn was my favorite player at that point in time. And so when they traded him for Zoe, I was like, oh, at what cost? Yeah, it's great to get your big man at a point in time when you needed to have a center around the NBA, because nobody was going to be able to stop Michael Jordan with any one wing player. So you might as well get a shot blocker out there. Alonzo was perfect for that, but Glen Rice, what a price to pay.
All right, so we're going long. So that's going to wrap up part 1 of this episode. Now that we have our starting 5s, we're going to have a separate podcast go up for part 2 in a few hours, probably after this one goes up. So make sure to check it out. And thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.